Hi, my name is Rebecca Frino. I'm a partner here with the Family Law Practice Group at Mandelbaum Barrett.
And my name is David Carton. I'm the co-chair of the Family Law Department here at Mandelbaum Barrett. When parties get divorced, there are many issues as it relates to parenting time. And very often, parties have different ideas as to how to raise children. But when you're living together, sometimes you gravitate towards a center position. But when parties separate, you no longer have that. And one of the issues that we're finding we have to deal with very, very frequently is the use of social media by children with divorcing couples.
I find this to be one of the most interesting topics for so many different reasons. Technology is evolving and the law is evolving. And admittedly, I don't think the law is evolving in pace with the technology, but I also think it's an interesting issue just from a news perspective, certainly. We've seen what's happened in Australia within the last several months in terms of their social media ban. There's chatter out of Sweden and the UK about potentially banning social media use for children under the age of 16. France already has some bans in place. And you see within communities a push to have open and honest dialogue about what children should be exposed to and using, certainly at younger ages under the age of 16. But to your point, David, it begs the question in a divorce, how do parents come to that middle ground, especially when the laws here are certainly not in lockstep with the evolving technology?
It's a really, really, really good point. So a court is not going to micromanage the lives of parents and say, okay, your child has to go to bed at a certain time, or your child is restricted for certain hours on screen time, and parents may have a different opinion on that. But where there's an inherent risk, and we understand with social media, with internet, there is an inherent risk of children being exposed to things that they shouldn't at very early ages. There's issues of bullying that we're seeing very often. So when it comes to a risk, that is where potentially a court would get involved. So if the parties can't agree, of course, a court can decide those issues. But when you have social media and one parent is the gatekeeper, if you will,
Mhm.
for example, an Apple ID login, how does the other parent even monitor what is going on at the other house?
It's such an interesting issue, again, for safety reasons. And you and I have chatted about this before, and you made a great example out of motocross. If a child says, I want to do motocross, and one parent says, sounds like a great idea, and the other parent says, well, wait a minute, I feel like that may be unsafe for an 8-year old. A court would look at that and really would emphasize and consider the safety aspect of it. When we discuss, negotiate, and litigate child related issues, the standard is best interest of the child that hinges on a child's health, education, well being. So, safety is necessarily an important component. I think that's the argument that parents are going to have to make and going to have to certainly highlight when it comes to these topics. But there also then is the question, as you raised, of how to monitor the usage. I think that requires open and honest dialogue, which is already challenging in a divorce, but it may be that both parents have to create an Apple ID for that child so both have access to it. Maybe it's both parents are linked to that child's social media so they can monitor it. Maybe it's the addition of an app onto a child's phone with parental controls that allow both parents to mirror that. Now that raises privacy concerns on its own right for a child. So you could see how down the line we're in somewhat of a conundrum in terms of how this plays out. But I can't ignore the fact that for divorcing parents, that dialogue can already be challenging. How do you necessarily get on the same page and have that open and honest conversation about an issue like this that is so important we can't turn away from it?
And divorcing parties may have issues coming to a consensus and even less significant issues.
Mhm.
But it is something we're dealing with in divorces, and a lot of divorce agreements. We're now including language regarding social media and how social media affects children and how the parents should monitor that.
I do see it as the number one topic that is now up and coming. So if you have any questions on this topic, if you're interested in discussing it and how to manage it and how to approach it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us here at Mandelbaum Barrett.
Thank you for listening to us.